The Conference Board's leading economic indicators were unchanged in May, and just adds more just boringness when it comes to this whole recession. Yeah, so let's go over this. This is interesting. Look, I even hate to talk about this, but to be honest with you, it's kind of fun because everyone and their mom gets all upset about various, I don't know, whatever they're reading about. It doesn't matter. Literally, it doesn't matter, and it's just kind of fun to debunk the naysayers. Look, folks, I'm not saying there'll never be a recession. I follow the capitalistic business cycle more than anybody. And anytime there's capitalism with human ingenuity, you're going to have ups and downs. That's all there is to it, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like here in just a second, and how irrelevant it really is in the overall scheme of things. But I get it. I mean, there is going to be a recession. We don't know when it's going to be. We can predict all day long. Why live your life based on this recession risk? Because it's always there. Certainly don't invest your money based on a set recession risk because it's always there. And I'll show you that here too in just a second. That's insane. To invest your money based on this impending or pending imminent recession, don't do that because you don't even know when the recession is until it's already been here. You don't know. We don't know if we're in a recession right now. We don't. It's always hindsight. Oh, there was a recession. Okay. All right. So let's go into this. As you know, I'm a big fan of advisorperspectives.com, advisorperspectives.com. This is from 620 by Jill Mislinski. I'm not familiar with Jill, but anyway, let's read this a little bit. There's a lot going on here. The latest Conference Board leading economic indicators, the LEI, remain unchanged at 111.8. The positive contributions from Consumer Outlook and the leading credit index were offset by negative contributions from stock prices. The ISM, Institute for Supply, I can't remember all these acronyms, Institute for Supply Management, I forgot. New orders index, the new order index were negative, and initial claims for unemployment insurance. But the Consumer Outlook and leading credit index offset those negative ones. In the 6-month period ending in May, the leading economic index increased by 0.3%, much slower than the growth rate of the previous 6 months. In addition, the strengths among the leading indicators became less widespread over this period. So the strengths were not quite as strong, but they certainly weren't negative. The coincident economic index rose 0.7% at a 1.3% annualized rate. So if we're gonna the 6 months, it rose by less than 1%, gives about a 1.3 GDP growth for the whole year. From November 2018 to May 2019, which is about half of the growth we had the previous 6 months. However, the strengths among the coincident indicators have remained more widespread than the weaknesses. The strengths are more widespread than the weaknesses. And these are the leading economic indicators, not the lagging. The lagging economic index declined in the last 2 months, while the CEI has been improving. As a result, the coincident toe-lagging ratio increased. Real GDP expanded at a 3.1% annual rate. And here's a log scale chart of the leading economic indicators series with documented recessions as identified by the National Bureau of Economic Research. The use of a log scale gives us a better sense of the relative sizes and peaks and troughs I can't remember, troughs, I think, right? Than a more conventional linear scale. So here we go. Going back to 1959, you see the economy just growing and growing and growing with some minor recessions thrown in here. Now, were they minor when you're living it? The 73, 74 certainly wasn't minor. The 80 to 82 wasn't minor, but in the overall scheme of your lifespan, look at that. That's small potatoes. Here's 2009 right there, 2008, and then we've been going back. So as you can see, regardless of politics, Reagan or Carter, so here's Carter. Let's go back, 1976. That wasn't good. All right, never mind. I'll scratch the Carter one. Look at that. That was bad. All right, so Carter was the exception. Nixon was in 1968 to 74, so Nixon was pretty good. Of course, you can attribute that to inflationary for sure. Who was Kennedy? There you go. Tax cuts. Kennedy tax cuts. Kennedy was my man in two realms. Very virulently anti-commie and a tax cut proponent. Absolutely. So there's Kennedy's tax cuts kicking in. There's Reagan's tax cuts kicking in. And people say, well, there's, Clinton's tax increases. Yep. And Obama's tax increases, yep. And so what do you do with it? I take tax cuts because it gives you your own money back any day of the week. Anyway, so you can look at it any way you want. The Carter one was pretty bad. That's a fact. Kennedy was good. Reagan was good. Obama was good. Bush from 2000 was not very good. So there you go. I mean, however you want to take that, I don't care. I really don't. I mean, Bush from the beginning of his presidency to right when he gave over is okay. However you want to attribute that, you can do whatever you want. Politically, I frankly don't care. As we see, though, at the end of the day, we started here at 30. Now we're up to, what's that, 90? No, that's 120 or so. So we've had a significant expansion of the economic activity output for the U.S. over the last 60 years, which is wonderful. And as you can see, again, tiny recession. This is the recession that cost Bush the election right there. Right there. Tiny recession, tiny. So you can see all that. All right. The United States leading economic indicators were unchanged in May, following 3 consecutive increases. So we've had 3 consecutive increases and a flattening. Positive contributions from financial conditions and consumers' outlook offset the weakness in stock prices in the manufacturing sector. The yield spread continued contribution to the LEI was neither positive or negative, while the economic expansion is now entering its 11th year, the longest in U.S. history. The leading economic indicators clearly points to a moderation in growth towards 2% by the end of the year. All right, so moderation in growth is certainly not recessionary. That's just all there is to it. Now, I like what Jill does here. For a better understanding of the relationship between the LEI and recessions, the next chart shows a percentage off the previous peak for the index, the number of months between the previous peak and the official recession. So remember, what we're saying now is, hey, it went up, it moderated, flatlined, and then at some point you probably see a recession, and that's what this would show you, the peaks with months before the recession. So when it peaked, all right, so it just peaked. Theoretically, it peaked. It moderated, so it went up and up and up. It peaked, stayed like that, and then the idea would be a recession is coming at some point, and we'll go into a little bit more what that means here in just a second. And here they're saying you got a 1 month, 7 month, 8 month, 14 month. And what this says is how long did it take for the recession to kick in after the peak? So let's just say we just peaked in May 2019, 17 months, 10 months, 20 months. 14 months, 8 months, that's the whole point. You don't know. So let's just say this is what year is that. That's 2000. So it peaked in 2000. It took 10 months after the peak before it went to recession. Now, you got to attribute, this is what's insane about this. In 2000, it wasn't a recession. It was only after September 11th that we actually went into a recession. And that's when the drop-off was right there. So I find it actually kind of ironic that recessionary, the idea you can have some kind of prediction on the recessionary likelihood based on unknown activity that's going to come. No one knew September 11th was going to happen. All right. And finally, the funny thing that cracks me up is in 2007, if you talk to anyone in the real estate business, they were in a huge recession, huge, but it didn't actually show until here, which is in 2000, was that the end of 2008 going into 2009. But even at the end of 2006, we saw huge recessionary stuff for various portions of the economic cycle for sure. But it took 20 months before the peak, and it started to moderate and then drop before we actually went into recession. And by the time they called it, essentially we're out. So anyway, again, you got, I don't know, on average, what's that, a year roughly, 2010, 17, 14, 8, basically a year between peak and when the recession happens. But they're so scattered, you can't make a prediction of that. I mean, look, we're going back to 1959. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 recessions since 1959. Let's just say we got 2019 minus 1959. That's 60 years. We've had 7 recessions. 7 recessions divided by 60 years. That's every 12% of the time we're in a recession. All right, so LEI in a 6-month smooth rate of change based on suggestions from someone from Wells Fargo. And recession alert, we can tighten the recession lead time for this indicator by plotting a smooth 6-month rate of change to further enhance our use of the Conference Board's recession risk. And basically they're saying here's all the green of growth, lead times before recession, 3 months, 2 months, 9 months, 2 months, 11 months, 15 months, and 15 months again. So 5 months and 15 months again. And so the issue is, again, the peak then the slow decline, recession, the peak, and then the slow decline, but no recession. Huh, interesting. So look at that. Peak, slow decline, no recession. Peak, decline, tiny recession. Was that 98? I think that's LTCM going kaput. Peak, recession, but it really wasn't recession until September 11th. Peak, no recession. Peak, no recession. No recession. Oh, there's a recession. Peak, no recession. Peak, 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 peak. See what I'm saying? You can't. Peak, no recession. Peak, no recession. Peak. I don't know what that means. So, I mean, so this is easy to say, hey, we're going to plot it based on an imminent recession, but we would have called an imminent recession right here, right? We're doomed at that point. No, we didn't. We're doomed at, no, okay, we had a tiny recession. We're doomed at that point. No, we didn't. Oh, okay, then we were. We're doomed at that point. Oh, okay, then we were. We're doomed at that point. Not really. Ah, no. That's called a dead cat bounce, if I've ever seen one right there. That's 78 to 80 and 80 to 82. Dead cat bounce. And then here comes Reagan's economic revitalize of the U.S. All right, we're doomed. No. And then finally in 90s, we're doomed. We're doomed. No, we're doomed. Not much. You see what I'm saying? And it just, how many times they called a recession right here, and then it didn't happen. Right here, it didn't happen. Right there, it didn't happen. Right there, it didn't happen. Right there, right. Anyway. As we can see, the leading economic indicators has historically dropped below a 6-month moving average anywhere between 2 to 15 months before recession. Well, I already just said 11.66% of the time we're in a recession. So, I mean, we're in the recession just all the time. The latest reading of the smooth rate of change suggests no term recession risk. Here's a 12-month smooth out version, which further eliminates the whipsaws. The conference board also, just anything I want to jump out at me there. All right. Nothing. The conference board also includes a coincident economic index in each release. It measures economic activity and is made up of 4 components: non-agricultural, payroll, personal income, less transfer payments, i.e. that'd be welfare checks. I never understood why that's not included in it, because someone's actually spending the welfare checks. I mean, it's not like it's just sitting there in your freaking bank account. Manufacturing and trade sales. And industrial production. Based on observations, when the LEI, leading economic indicators, begins to decline, based on observations, when the LEI, the leading economic indicators, begins the lagging economic, I can't remember what anymore. What's the CEI? Current economic activity. Okay, so when the leading economic, there we go. So based on observations, when the leading economic indicators begins to decline, the current economic indicators is still rising, and here's a chart of both. So you see, what's the green is the conference board, LEI is the blue. So leading economic indicators is beginning to decline, and yet I don't know, that seems pretty odd. That seems pretty tight to me. I wouldn't make any issue with that. The leading is indicating it's declining pretty significantly, yet the current economic activity is rising. I don't pay any weight in that. I guess that's it. So that's all I want to talk about. The LEI versus CI. This one right here is what I find I chuckle at. They call the recession, but they didn't. But they called it again, no, they didn't. And every time they call it and it doesn't happen, no one holds them accountable. But when they say we're in good shape and then it gets cracked, then everyone holds them accountable. It's the nature of the economic prognosticators. You never get held accountable for calling negative stuff, but you always do get held accountable for calling positive stuff. You know who James Glassman was? He's a guy who had written the Dow 36,000. And then the Dow proceeded, I think he wrote it in 1998, and then the Dow proceeded to go to 6,000 and 2,000. I can't remember. And it got crunched. It got crunched, from 2001 and 2, and everyone made fun of James Glassman. But how about all these doomsayers? We're getting a recession. They're always wrong. How come they never get held accountable like James Glassman or Irving Fisher? That name may ring a bell to you from the 1929. Whenever you call for positive stuff and it doesn't happen, you're always held accountable. Whenever you call for negative stuff and it does happen, the positive stuff, and whenever you call for negative stuff and it doesn't happen, no one ever cares, which is my whole thing with the climate science, because they're always calling for it. They've been calling for stuff, the catastrophic, for years, since Malthus. And it hasn't happened, and yet we still give them a mic. I just don't get it. All right, as always, smash. We'll see you next time.